Hey guys, this is Jennifer Mason. I'm happy to have you on this webcast. This is one of a series that we're doing on no-code business solutions. So no-code business solutions means no semicolons, no syntax, just highlighting the things that we can do with SharePoint out of the box. Anytime you want to access some of the other things that we have, you can head over to our resources site. So if you go to sharepoint.rackspace.com, you can hit our resource center, and then we have links to register for the additional webinars as well as some other videos that we have. So in today's session, we are going to talk about simple document management. So these are all of the things that we can do with SharePoint out of the box to manage documents. So a lot of people come to us and say, you know, I have this file server and I need to move everything to SharePoint, and how am I going to do that, and how is SharePoint going to be better than a file server? And so a lot of times, you know, we step back and say, okay, well, what are you trying to do with your documents? You don't really want to say, I have this huge file server and I just want to move it into SharePoint. You want to say, I have these files and here's how I access them, here's how I use them, here's the value I need to get out of them. How can I organize them inside of SharePoint that's going to allow me to get the biggest bang for my buck? So in this webinar, we're going to talk through several different features of things you can do with SharePoint. They're going to help you kind of get started for managing these documents. So I am working from just a simple team site. This is a team site that I created called Document Management Demo, and I have just some simple links on the top that are going to let me jump into different features inside of SharePoint. The idea is that you would take these different features and combine them together to build out an entire solution. So in one solution, you might use folders, in another document sets, another scenario ratings. You might use document sets and ratings combined together. So you can combine all of these features together, but we're going to talk about them individually so you can see the different elements that are there. So we're going to start out with talking about metadata. So metadata can simply be defined as data about data. The idea is that we want to be able to quickly get our content out of the system when we put it in there. A lot of times this is done in file servers right now with folders and different things like that, but what if I have one document that is a human resources document for sales and marketing? So I might have a document that gets classified two different ways. If I was using a traditional file server, I would need to put this in two different locations. But by using metadata, I'm going to be able to tag my documents and then sort and filter through the list and find what I need. So I can come over here to my columns, I can click down, I can filter them. So when I click on that, I'm only going to see accounting and finance documents. I can go to review month and I can say, okay, well, just show me everything from December. So I'm going to be able to filter this entire list just based on the values that are already there. So I'm going to come over here, reset that filter for us so we can see them all again. Documents can be classified with metadata through the use of adding columns to your SharePoint library. So inside of our SharePoint library here, we can go up to library and we can see that we have the ability to create columns. We can also click on library settings over here and we can go down and see all of the columns associated with our library. I have got a couple different columns, a couple of different column types. The first one that we're going to talk about is managed metadata. So managed metadata is going to be taking advantage of the managed metadata store. So this is how you could have one term set that could be used across your entire farm. So if I click on classification, we're going to be able to drill down and see the term set that I'm associated with. Okay. Come down here, we see that I am part of the general business taxonomy term set. And this is going to be a collection of terms that's just about general business. This is actually one that I pulled off of freeware, so it's just a collection of common business terms. All right. I can also click on edit the term set using the term store manager, and when I click on this, let's see if it's going to let me get to it. I can also get to it over here through site settings. It's going to let me open the term store manager. Come over here. I always lose this link when I go looking for it. Okay. When I come over here, what this is going to let me do is it's going to let me go in and edit the terms even further, where I can go in and I can add synonyms and different things like that, different language translations. Okay, so let's get this up. So human resources, for example, I could come over here and say it's human resources, but it's also HR. And so I want people to be able to just type in HR, but then that's going to get changed over to human resources. So I can come in here and put these different labels in so that I'm not counting on everyone to remember that I tagged it as accounting and finance. They can put accounting or finance. For information technology, they can put IT. So I want to be able to help them fill in the contents the best that I can. All right, so we're going to go back now to this document example that I have. We're going to look at what happens once we get that column set up. So we're going to get that column set up, and if we go look at the properties of the document, we're going to be able to come over here and click on Edit the Properties. And we're going to see all of the values for this particular document. So we have a name of the document. We can give it a friendly title if we wanted to, and we have a classification. So if I go ahead and take the value out of that, if I just come over here and type in HR, it's going to recognize that I meant human resources. And so by being able to do that type ahead, it's going to help me pick what it is. It's also just got regular standard type ahead. So if I started to type finance, it's going to come up and say, do you mean financial projections, liability cases, firewalls, what fiscal year, what value am I trying to put in there? So just as I start typing, it's going to try to look ahead and find out the values that I need. So I'm going to go ahead and select it back to human resources. Also see that I have a date here. I have a business unit. So what business unit am I part of? And these are all values that I can set and have associated with my document. And really the reason for setting metadata is so that when you're looking for the documents later, you can drill down and find the things that are relevant to what you're looking for. One of the other features inside of SharePoint is the ability to turn on managed metadata navigation. So you see over here, that I've got these drill downs directly within my site that are going to allow me to, from the left side of the screen, drill down and find out, show me everything that's accounting and finance, or show me anything that's general ledger. And these are going to be different classifications that I'm going to be able to drill down from the left. And this is something that gets configured in the library settings. So if we come over here to library and go to the library settings, we're going to see that we have an option for managed metadata navigation. So I can click on that, and then I'm going to see, okay, what hierarchies do I want to put over there, and then what filters do I want to put. So you see that I put a modified by filter. Okay. So if we come over here and look at that, go back to the library, here's my modified filter. So we can come over here and say, was it modified by site admin? And then it's going to go ahead and do that filter for me and pick all the things that were modified by the site admin. So this is a way that users can interact with the document. So instead of having to go folders deep and find different data, they're going to be able to come out and find the different pieces that they need. Okay. All right. So this is just a couple of simple examples about metadata. You can also, once you have the library opened, you can put it in edit mode and edit these columns all together. So if I was in library and if I wanted to hit quick edit here, not create a view, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so if we came up over here to library, we could go quick edit, and it's going to come up and show me in an Excel type format. So I can also come over here and select different values when I'm here and then change them for all of the different pieces. So I could change it from engineering to support. I can even use Excel to drag and drop and fill them in. So there's a lot of different things you can do with working with the metadata. So I'm going to say stop editing this list, and I see that all of my changes have been set. So this is one of the great ways that you can work with your metadata inside of SharePoint, especially using this managed metadata navigation piece that's inside of the document library. So this isn't really a web part or anything that you can put anywhere, but inside of your library you can turn it on. So this is something that I highly recommend you do, especially if you're trying to get your users to be able to drill down and get that value out of the metadata that they're working with. All right, so next up, the thing that we want to talk about is folders. I like to say that folders are good inside of libraries whenever they're needed. So you've got different solutions that you're working with. Sometimes folders are just needed. It's hard to get around doing folders, so you want to be able to find that right mix. One of the great things about folders, though, is as you create folders and as you have metadata, you're going to be able to set default values for those folders. So for instance, engineering here, I have it set so anytime I add a new document to engineering, it's going to go ahead and add that metadata value for me of engineering. Oops. Go ahead and drag and drop here. Okay. There we go. So we've got that document there, and it's going to go ahead and add it to engineering. If I was to add that to If I was going to add it to operations, I can come over here, click on operations, and again, pull up a folder. Did not mean to click that. Pull up a folder, drag it in there. It's going to put it, and it's going to set it to operations. And so what this is allowing me to do is it's allowing me to set default metadata based on the folder that it's in. So how I do this is I create the folders that I want to have inside of the site. So I can come over here. I could add a new folder to this guy. So I can come over here and say new folder. We've got sales, marketing, operations. How about we have purchasing? So we might come over here, have a purchasing folder. So now I have purchasing as a folder. I might also want to go into my library, go to my library settings, look at my columns. I see I've got business units. Maybe I want to add purchasing to this list. So this is just a choice column. I'm going to come over here and add purchasing. Okay, so now we have that one added to our list. I'm going to say OK. Now I'm able to go into my library settings. So I'm back on the library settings page, and I am going to go to my default column settings. So it's the column default value settings. I'm going to click on this, and when we hop in here, we're going to see that I have all of my different folders. And inside of each one, I can go and say, okay, inside here, make business unit equal to engineering. Inside here, make business unit equal to operations. When I go to purchasing, we're going to see that it doesn't have a default value. I can simply click on the column here, use this default value, and I can change that to purchasing. Now, whenever I add a document into the purchasing library, the default value for the business unit is going to be purchasing. So this is a way that I can have information about the documents automatically set by where they put it in the library. This is an excellent transition point. If you've got users that want to use metadata, but it's so new to them and they've been using folders for a long time, this is a great, kind of like a gateway drug. It's going to get them excited about using metadata because then they're going to be able to do things on filtering and sorting and grouping data together, but they don't necessarily have to add it because just by putting it in a folder, they're going to be able to have that default value. So this is a great way to get people started with using folders. I still like to be very careful with folders. You don't want to have super long URLs, so I'd venture to say that you really only want to go 1 to 2 levels deep with folders, but this is, if you're going to use folders, it's really a best practice to try to default as much of the information as you can so that users can easily get to that data. All right. So we're going to head back to our demo site now and look at the next thing that we have. The next concept that we're going to talk about is document sets. Now, the way to think about document sets is a group of documents that can be grouped together with like data that need to be processed through a workflow or something at the same time. So, for instance, I have an example here with project documents. So all of my documents that are associated with Project A, if I click on this here, it's going to show me, well, what kind of classification does the project have? Who's the project manager? What's the project name? This metadata applies to every document that's part of this document set. Whereas I might have individual metadata about the document, this metadata applies to that entire group. So I can come over here and change it, and it's going to change it just for that group. So I can put a different project classification, change the name, different things along those lines. I can also go back and do workflows on an entire document set. So let's say that I came over here, I needed to get someone to approve all of the Project A documents. I could do that. You can also set up default documents to be included with it. So every time I create a new document set, my document set's going to already have the documents I need. So when you think about that in a project perspective, that could be the project budget template's going to be in there, the project charter's going to be in there, maybe a status report. So these are all different things that you can configure by configuring the library or the list. Document sets are a content type feature. So we're going to come over here, we're going to look at site settings, and we're going to go in and look at the content types. If I go look at my site content types, see that I have different content types here for custom content types, and then we've also got the document set content types. So we have our document set content types. Okay. When I go back to my library, okay, we can go into our library settings. And we see that we're using the project documents content type here. So we see that this is a custom content type. If I can click on it, I see that project documents is there. It's got all of the different pieces of metadata that we saw about that. And so what this does is it makes it available inside of our library. So again, if I'm in the library and I have a new project set, I can come over here, come down and say, okay, I have a new set of project documents. So I could call this, Project D documents, and put in my description, put in a project classification. I can drill down into the list, pull up whatever classification makes sense for the thing I'm working on. Okay. Get all of this set up here and say save. And now I'm going to see that I have basically a location to store all of the documents that are associated with this. But if I need to go up to a higher level and see it, I can just see, okay, well, here are all of my document sets. I can see when it was last modified, different things like that. So imagine that I had all my projects here. Maybe there's other data that I want to keep about this at this library level that says, who's the project manager? What's the status of it? But then it allows people to drill down and see them. So document sense is a huge way to kind of group like data together so that you can play with it in different ways and kind of group different things together. Think of multiple things as one unit together based on a classification. So this is probably one of the underused features inside of SharePoint. So it first came available in SharePoint 2010, improved a little bit inside of SharePoint 2013. So if it's not something that you're using, it's definitely something to become familiar with, and then you can see if it incorporates into your solution in any way. All right. Okay, so the next thing that we want to look at is this concept of ratings. So ratings are going to give us the ability to classify our data and to say, okay, I really like this one a lot. I'm going to give it a, 5 stars, or I don't like this one. I'm going to give it 1 star. I didn't find it very helpful. So ratings come in 2 flavors in SharePoint 2013. The first one is the 5-star rating system. So I see here, this is an example of it. I'm going to give this 5 stars. I'm going to give it 1 star. You also have the ability to do the likes. So that's a thumbs up, thumbs down. That's kind of like a Facebook type thing. So I can come into my library. I can go to the library settings. And under my rating settings, I can turn on, do I want ratings or do I not want ratings? And do I want likes or stars? So right now I have on stars, but I could also turn on likes. And as soon as I do that, it's going to give me the ability to say, yes, I like this, thumbs up, or no, I don't. Okay. So we can like it. Different things along those lines. Then I get a little smiley face because I liked it. So again, different ways that you can do it. However you do it is really going to be dependent about what you're trying to get out of your users. Great example of doing this is in a help desk solution. So you have a help desk solution. You're giving your users solutions that they can use to help them solve their problems. So you might want them to rate it. Is it helpful or is it not helpful? Because this just becomes a column in the library, you can then sort your list based on liking. So you can say, show me the highest rated items, and that can sort them then from the most liked to the least liked, or vice versa. And so then if you had, articles that you were showing people or news stories, and you had given them the ability to rate it, you could set up web parts that are going to sort and filter based on their ratings, and then based on whether people like it or not, the most important and the most liked content is going to filter its way up to the top. So you want to be careful to only use ratings where ratings make sense. If you have a huge library, you've got the star ratings there, but no one's actually rating them, then it's not going to provide a ton of business value, so you want to be careful with that. You also want to take into cultural considerations with this. I remember one of the first times I started talking about ratings, I was in a session with Dux, and Dux was talking about how he was at a military base, and they were joking about ratings and saying what person is going to give a 5-star general a 1-star rating on their document. Probably wouldn't happen. So you want to be careful and make sure that you don't use ratings when ratings are not going to make sense to the organization. So they're there, they're available, you want to use them to bring out people. It's a way to kind of promote that social interactivity with the site, so people can give their content, say if they like it, help generate new and exciting content based on what people think. So a pretty simple feature. Love to add that on the home page of various solutions so people can come in and rate the things that they like the most. Okay. The next piece that we are going to look at is versioning. This goes back several versions inside of SharePoint, where you can go in and set up versions inside of a document library. And the concept behind this is that you are working on a document. You want to be able to start working on the document, save it as a draft, and then when you're done, you want to be able to submit it for approval for someone. So if we go in and look at the library settings, I think I just lost connectivity. Let me see. There we go. Go in and look at the library settings here. We can go look at our versioning settings. And the things that we're going to be able to see here is, are we going to require content approval? This means, do things get set as pending until they're approved? Are they in a draft state when they're getting working on, approved, pending when they're in the process of getting approved, and then approved when they're finally approved? Are we going to use major or minor versions, and how many do we want to keep of each? This is a first in, first out type scenario. So let's say that I said I wanted to keep 5 versions. If I create then a 6th version, the first version I created would fall off, and then the last 5 would be there. And then we can say draft item security. Who do we want to read our drafts? Do we want anyone to read them, or do we just want people who submitted it plus the people who can approve it that are reading it? 2 separate scenarios that I like to think about with this one. So let's say that we're a team working on a project where we're going to submit some documents to a customer, an external customer. We may want to keep the documents in draft and pending state and then set it to approved once we actually send it to the client. So to our team, that means if it says draft or pending, it means the final document hasn't been sent to the client. But if it says approved, we know it got sent to a client. So that's one scenario where you would want all users who can edit items to also see the draft items. If you flip that around to an HR scenario, and let's say we're getting ready to update our Rackspace dress code. Well, I wouldn't want rackers who could see the site be able to see the draft until it was a totally published item. So in that sense, I would only want users who could approve the item to be able to see the changes there. That way I wouldn't be getting information out there before I was ready to get it out there. Okay, so that's what we mean by that. And then we can also have the required check-in and check-out, which means before they edit the document, do we actually want them to have to be required to check it in or out? So when we have this set up on the library here, we can see this document, it's got the little green box to it, and that means that somebody has got it checked out. It's actually checked out to Jennifer Mason here. We can go down and we can check out documents. We can notice that as soon as it's checked out, we have a draft state for it. We can also come back over here, and once we're done with it, we can say check it back in. And do we want it to be a minor version or a major version? If we say minor version, I'll say OK. It's going to come up. It still says draft. But then we can come over here and we can say publish a major version. Say OK. And now it is going to be pending. And so what this means is that I've worked on it. I've said, hey, I'm done with this one. We're ready for it to be a major version. So then the next person will have to come along, and they'll have to come over here and mark it as approved. They can also reject it. Now, this demo works much better when the same person isn't creating the document, submitting it for approval, and then approving the document. But since I'm one account here doing all of it, that's why it looks like it takes extra steps. But in reality, it would usually be someone that's working on the document. They're going to submit it for approval. And then usually through a workflow or some scenario like that, another administrator is going to come over and say, I either approve this or I reject this. Once it gets approved, notice that the version number changes to 3.0. Okay, so we have those different pieces there. As a site administrator, you can always go into the library, go to the library settings, and manage files which have no checked-in version. And so what this will do is if there's files that are checked out to people and there's nothing checked in, you can go and then take over their check-in and check-out. So if you have fears of users not checking things in and out or checking something out and then going away for 3 or 4 weeks and then no one has access to it, don't worry. As the administrator of the library, you can come in and you can take ownership of it and be able to check that document back in. All right, so that's kind of a high-level overview of versioning. It kind of is what it is. Sometimes that's going to work great for your scenarios. There's other times where you don't really want to do versioning at all. For this, it's going to keep a version on top of each other. So if I come look at the ellipse here and go to the second ellipse and I can see the version history, I'm going to see the 3 previous versions. So I'm going to be able to see all of my versions, see whatever comments were made. I can click on it to actually open it, different things along those lines. In some organizations I've worked in, they actually do versioning by file name because they need to be able to keep separate file names based on versions. So that wouldn't necessarily work for this type of scenario. You would have to maybe look at doing it a different way. But if you were able to keep it and keep the same file name and then just update it, you would be able to see here, you know, that the document got smaller. We obviously made changes to it on 227, and what's the status and different things like that, and seeing all of the comments. Okay, perfect. The next thing that we're going to look at is something that is new inside of SharePoint 2013, and this is going to be a way that we can store videos inside of SharePoint. So this is pretty cool because it allows us to take advantage of some of the things that are part of the Site Assets library. So when we built this library, we actually went to Site Content. We added an app. And then we picked the Assets library for our template. Now, this is going to give us the features that we're going to look at inside of this library here. Where we see here, I'm going to click on it. It's going to start to play. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and pause that here. But I could see that I could put related items in here. So if I wanted to, and I said, you know, this video really relates to this document or this PowerPoint that we have with it, I could just drag that over there and drop it in there. It's going to upload that for me. Really builds a great way for people to quickly see videos and content associated with it. I see who's in the video. I can also download it. What's really great about this is if I go back to the library here, I click on the ellipse, come to the other ellipse, and I say go edit properties, what we're going to see is that we have this ability to keep all of this information about the video here. So I can give it a description. I can say who owns the video. I can say, do I want them to download it? Do I show the embed link? Who are the people in it? I can also do renditions. And so this is really great if I have multiple users with different internet connections and they don't always have a high-speed internet. They can't connect quickly. I may need to go in and set up different renditions so that they can get access to just a different version of the same content. Okay, we've also got the ability to change the thumbnail here. So if I can capture it from the video, so I can actually click here and hit play, and then whenever I'm ready, I can capture it. So I can capture what that thumbnail would be. I could use a picture from my computer or even from a web address. So this is a great way to manage videos inside of SharePoint. So this is what they offer inside of SharePoint today. If you were at the SharePoint conference, you also saw how they were getting ready to add some new video portal features on Office 365, which just extends this to another level, gives you more power behind it. Using Azure as the backend. So that's definitely something that's coming in the future, but if you have the need to manage videos today, or if you're working solely in an on-prem environment, you could use these features to kind of manage and organize the videos and give users a little bit more detail upon the things that you're storing inside of SharePoint. All right. The next thing we're going to look at, I'm going to do the order a little bit different here, is this SkyDrive Pro, which is really, OneDrive now. So I need to update the demo deck, but OneDrive is going to be your ability to sync with your content locally. So inside of every document library, you're going to see a sync up in the top corner. Once you go ahead and say sync and then say sync now, when you open it inside of File Explorer, you're going to be able to see your content and see that it's there. So when we come over here, we've got my SkyDrive Pro. We've got all of my content that's here. This shows you all of the content that is linked there, as well as we have personal SkyDrive. So this is where I have got my different documents that are here. Can also click on my other SharePoint sites. So these are SharePoint sites that I'm linking to, and then here's my site library. So if we were able to go look at my URL for my site, we would see this is all of the content that I have there. The little green means that it is synced and it is ready to go. If I was to add new content in here or to make changes here, it would show up with a little icon letting us know that it was getting ready to sync. So this is a great way for users to be able to work remotely with their content. So whenever I'm inside of a document library, I would see that. So I can go over here and open one of them. So let's say I picked this one. I see my sync option. So I can come over here and say sync, and it's going to pop up and let me know if I want to sync it. Okay. All right. So there we go. So it's going to go through that process of syncing it. It's going to put the library there. I can say sync it. Okay. And it's going to go ahead and put the contents there. And then it's going to ask me if I want to see the contents that are already there or if I want to wait for it to go. So this will take a little bit of time, but we can come back and look at that in a bit. Okay. All right. And put my credentials in later. All right. A couple of other things that we want to talk about as we kind of get towards the end of this, make sure we leave some time for questions as well, is that we've got a document dashboard example. And what I wanted to show in this one is that you can do more with documents than just having a document library. So we kind of go back to that project scenario, and I have a list of projects. And within each project, I have a project description and a project manager. But I also have documents that might be associated with a project. So I might want to see what's the most recently modified document. And for there, I want to see, what are the latest check-in comments? Who was it modified by? Different things along those lines. But for the rest of the documents, I just want to see what's there. And so as I click on the different items along the left, I see that all of this changes. So I see that Maddie is the project manager for project 2. I see a description of the project, and I see that test 5 is the document associated with it. If I come down here to project 5, I see that there aren't any documents with it yet, but Jeff Kingery is my project manager. If I click on project 1, I see that Jennifer's the project manager. Here is the text about it, and I see what document has been modified most recently. And so this is all done through connected web parts on a page. So if we come over here and edit the page, we're going to be able to go in, click on edit the web part, and see that we have a web part connection where I'm getting filter values from the selected project web part. And so by having a single list of all of our projects and then using that as a lookup field inside of our document library, we're going to be able to classify the data so that when we make changes to the data, we're going to be able to show that on the page. So it's more than just working with the documents. It's all about creating a story for our users so that we get, the proper data with the right context that leads them to the right action. So if we want them to manage projects easily, the more data we can give them in a digestible form, the better it's going to be for them. Okay. And one of the final pieces we want to look at before we start, jumping into questions are some of the new web parts that are available for us just through search. And so this is a search web part that we have here that has just recently changed items. And I'm going to come over here and say edit the web part so we can go in and see that this is a search query that's filtering based on documents. So I'm showing 6 items. If I come up here and change the query, give it just a second to load here. We're going to see that it's doing it by the current site, and then we've set a refiner on it to say show me things just from the document library. So we've got this here. It's showing me just items from that document library. We can also say just show me if it's a document type. If I knew the specific content type ID, which I could go get from the site, I could pull that. Or if there were certain things I wanted to get from a certain author, maybe just certain file extensions. So I could add just doc. Just show me things that are docx. So I have that there. I can say OK. Say apply, and then it's going to go against the search queries and pull that data. If I have my farm configured to always be searching and doing the incremental crawls, I'm always going to get the most accurate information because it's doing continuous crawls, so data is going to show up there relatively fast. Okay, so I see my document items that have changed. There are some other web parts. If we just came over here and said insert web part, we can look at some of these roll-up web parts. Give it just a second. Where we can pull things by search. So we can come over here, content search, content query, relevant documents. So documents that are relevant to the current user. This is all getting pulled from search. So showing, what is it that the user would be looking at that they could get where we could pull up this data. So these are all some of the new things that are there inside of 2013, some of these new web parts that are there. So popular items, we could pull that up and then filter that just by documents, recommended items, videos, different things along these lines. Recently changed items, that's the one that we had on the page already, so it's recently changed, and then we just filtered it to only show documents. So these are some of the different things that we can do with documents inside of SharePoint to kind of push it out to the users easier. So instead of saying, go to this library, find what's most recently modified, and put that in a web part on a page, we can just use the search web part and say across the entire farm or across the entire search scope, what's recently been modified, and display that in my site. So at a high level, that is some of the stuff that you can do inside of SharePoint in terms of managing your documents. I know we covered a lot of ground very quickly, but the idea is to keep it in a digestible chunk so that you guys can kind of get started with it. So I'd like to transition into the last 20 minutes of the webcast and do any questions that you guys have. So if you guys post any questions inside of the questions box, we'll go ahead and get those answered. And then we can kind of close out. So we'll give that just a couple of seconds and see what questions we come up with. Okay, so Robin asked what document or what web parts were used on the document dashboard. So we've got three different types of web parts from two different lists. So if we come over here and look at our site contents, we have got a projects list. And inside of the projects list, that's a single list with a title, a description, and a project manager. And then inside of the documents list, we have got a column for associated project, which is a lookup to that projects list that we just showed. So on that one page, I'm going to go ahead and put it in edit mode. Show you the web parts we have there. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different web parts. 3 of them are just different views of the same projects list, and 2 of them are different views of the document library. So we're only using 2 lists in this example, and then we're putting the web parts on the page and just filtering to show only certain data. So in this web part for select a project, it's a view of the projects list that just shows the title. Project manager, this is a view of the projects list that just shows the project manager, and here's a view that just shows the description. And so what that's going to allow us to do then is set up filters to all of the web parts so that whatever is selected here becomes a filter value for the other web parts. So that's how we put that one together. I believe under our resources page there might actually be another webcast. I think I've done one in the past. I might have to look for it, about setting up these simple dashboards. So hopefully that gets you started in the right direction. Okay. Okay, let me pull up. Okay, so one question is, how is SharePoint handling any bandwidth considerations around the video storage and retrieval? Is this something they have seen and are addressing through the updates in Office 365? Yes, I'd say this is something that they're definitely looking at in Office 365. At the SharePoint conference, they had information on a video portal that was going to be available with Azure, which was going to help with some of that back-end stuff. If you're using a lot of videos and you're not using Office 365, or even if you're using Office 365 before those new features are available, you could run into bandwidth issues, and the best answer I could give you for that scenario is it depends. So it's going to be one of those scenarios that you're going to have to take into consideration your users, where they're at, what's the best way to push that information out to them. So if that's something you have a lot of questions on or want to discuss further, we would be happy to hop on a call, maybe talk through some of those things with you. If you just go to our website and do the Contact Us form, we can definitely set something up. That's just one of those ones that's hard to answer unless we know more information about the specifics. Okay. Yeah, so she asked me if I could click on just project 2 or 3 to show what happens in that dashboard example. So I'll go ahead and click on that. So right now we're on project 1, and when I click on project 2, it's going to change and show that additional information. Okay, great question. Would you use document sets as a way to compile multiple documents into one larger document for a client? And so, like, if you have a cover sheet, different things, cover letter, deliverables, and different things like that. It'd be one way to group them all together, but there's no feature inside of SharePoint out of the box that's going to compile them all together. So it would be a great start, and if maybe the last step is someone's going to go open them and compile them together, or you could put them all together and maybe there's some custom code or something like that that you could put in there that would group them all together into a single document. So it would be a way to group and organize them. Not sure if it was if it will get you fully to that solution of what you need of grouping them into one document. Okay. Okay, I think I have answered the questions that are in there, so we'll just give it another second and see if there's any additional questions. Hopefully you guys found this helpful. We're going to be doing another one in the future about workflows, and then another one next week about workflows, and then hopefully another month or so we might pick this up and do some additional ones. So hopefully you found this helpful. We always have all of the upcoming events on our website, so if you go to sharepoint.rackspace.com and go to the Resource Center, you can find out information about whatever items we have coming up, as well as if you want to reference this later. Hopefully within 24 to 48 hours this will be online so that you can reference it. But if you go to sharepoint.rackspace.com and hit click on resources, you can see upcoming webinars that we have, as well as videos to other content that we have. Okay. Awesome. Well, guys, I don't think any more questions have come in, so we're going to just go ahead and wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you on other webcasts that we offer. Thanks, guys.